Hey folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and with me as always is my co-host Danny Gillette. We're back here for another Monday morning podcast to talk about some Nebraska football, basketball, recruiting, and everything else that's kind of going on with the Huskers. I know it's been a kind of a busy week. We didn't record last Friday, so we're kind of catching up on the news cycle, but we did get a commitment from Nebraska, got Gibson Pyle over the weekend. We also have a lot of Dylan Raiola news, coaches clinic, spring scrimmage, so transfer portal, lots of stuff to cover today. We'll start with the recruiting though, and I know everybody's number one topic of conversation when it comes to Nebraska football recruiting is Dylan Raiola, and on that front, it wasn't necessarily a great week. There was the news that he wasn't going to come for the spring game, which, people, that's kind of been a debated topic of, whether that's that big of a deal or not. But then, Steve Wiltfong dropped in with the crystal ball. Some Georgia experts, have followed with on three. So he's kind of somewhat trending. So, Danny, I guess, how are you doing on this Monday morning? And how do you feel about where things are with Dylan Raiola?
My Red Sox got a season opening series win, so I'm very happy. And I don't give a shit about Steve Wilfong's crystal ball. I take more stock into the Georgia experts, but Wilfong changes his crystal balls like he changes his underwear, so I'm not really worried about it at all. I know you said before that he kind of looks at his crystal ball differently, like who's in the lead or who's trending at the moment, but I mean, at some point, just from a pure aesthetic standpoint, if nothing else. If you're going to change your crystal ball 85 times a month, then, I don't really. I like the experts that put their crystal balls in less frequently because hopefully by then they've had some, data to back it up. But I'm not saying Wilfong doesn't, but changing it so much is just crazy to me. So I do put a lot more stock into the Georgia experts. Wilfong, I'm not going to lose sleep over him, but I'm fully prepared, and I've said this before that we're gonna have to recruit another quarterback.
Yeah, it doesn't look good right now with Dylan Raiola. Sean Callahan, in his kind of Monday roundup, he kind of threw out there he wasn't even sure, at this point he expects, of an official visit from Raiola, but there hasn't been an announcement. That was a key thing for me is that Georgia's been the only school that got that official visit announcement kind of coming up. If you look at the on three prediction machine, which it based off a lot of different data, but Nebraska right now is third right there. USC is number two, Georgia's number one. Jake Rowe just put in a prediction for Georgia. He's one of their expert at the on three Georgia site. So he probably has some intel there to back that up. Yeah, with Wilt Fong, he definitely does move his crystal balls around a little bit. We saw that with the Malachi Coleman recruitment too. So it's not something that's unusual, but I do think that he has, some reason for doing it. Obviously, I think that it's pretty clear that something has shifted and that Georgia, is the leader at this point. That doesn't mean that they're going to win this recruitment, but something needs to change for Nebraska, and we'll see what happens. But it's going to be difficult. I feel like if even if they just get that one official visit. I just personally, to me, I thought it was important that he came for the spring game because, Nebraska doesn't have a whole lot of on field, product to show Dylan Raiola. It's not like, he knows what he's getting into at Georgia and USC, especially, from a scheme standpoint and all that type of stuff. So I did think that was important. Not that he can't watch the spring game or not that he hasn't seen practice and all that type of stuff. And I'm sure that they, have gone over all those things and answered his questions. But I just thought that was an important visit. And to me, it was a bad sign when, that visit was canceled. I know he's doing other things, but I still feel like he could have found a way to make the trip if he wanted to.
I'm fully prepared to not land him. I really am. I really am fully prepared to not land him whatsoever. And it's not for the fact that he didn't visit here, he didn't visit that. You just kind of mentioned it. Nebraska has nothing to go off of with this new coaching staff to this point. I'm not saying that they never will and that they'll fail or whatever, but like you said before, you're asking him to kind of take a shot in the dark, and it's hard to do when you have proven programs like USC and Georgia who are also recruiting you. So I don't blame him one bit if he doesn't choose Nebraska. Would I love for him to choose Nebraska? Absolutely, but would I be surprised if he didn't? Absolutely not. I mean, there's programs that are more proven with recent success, and that doesn't work in Nebraska's favor. Now, you know when you look at some of the other spring game visits, you're going to get Brandon Baker to come in for a visit again, and I think that's going to be huge. And Wells McGahee's coming, so as long as you surround your quarterback with a good line and some decent playmakers, which I think we'll be able to do, I think we would have decent success with any quarterback. I'm not saying we're going to have Raiola level of success, but as long as the foundation is properly built, getting any quarterback, I think we have a shot with this staff. It's not going to be a throwaway quarterback either. I think it's going to be, someone with pretty solid talent. I just saw, and I can't remember his name, but the staff followed a four-star quarterback recently on Twitter. So I'm going to go look that up while you talk.
It's actually Dante Reno. I know
That's
I'm
who it was.
familiar
Yeah.
with the guy. So he is a good quarterback. He's been committed to South Carolina for quite a while. So we'll see. I'm not sure what Marcus Satterfield's level of involvement was in that recruitment. I'm sure he played a role as the quarterback's coach. There hasn't been an offer. I'm not sure what the contact has been, but if they're gonna try to get that flip going, I mean they need to get him on campus sooner rather than later. So we'll see it actually extend an official offer would be a step in the right direction. So that's a name to know. And obviously we've thrown Daniel Kalen's name out there. He says that he's 110% committed to Missouri. We'll see if that can change, and maybe he's gonna maybe he didn't appreciate the fact that Nebraska kind of prioritized Raiola over him. I mean, that was pretty clear that that's what was happening. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get back into the mix there. But that would be my first step. I would try to shift gears with Kalen and see. But at the same time, I mean, one of his teammates, Isaiah McMorris, also got a crystal ball to Oklahoma.
Mm.
So I mean, I don't know. It's those are two in-state guys that don't look like they're coming to Nebraska, and that's disappointing, I think.
Yeah, quite honestly, I'm more upset about McMorris because he's one that I legitimately thought that, we have a shot at landing. But again, you're asking these kids to take a shot in the dark at a program with a new coaching staff versus a solid foundation like Oklahoma. They've been proven to develop players. They've been proven to put kids in the NFL. So, I'm not expecting every single player that visited last weekend to commit here. Obviously, a lot of these players. McMorris didn't even come to campus last weekend, if I remember correctly. He had a 7-on-7, and so, you know, as much as I would like McMorris and Raiola, I still think this coaching staff could build a solid foundation to where we could still win ball games. And I didn't feel that way about the previous coaching staff. Looking back on it now, I mean, you know, Matt Rule, I mean, he's all over the place. He was just at the Lincoln Stars hockey game the other day. I mean, the guy doesn't sleep, he doesn't rest, he embraces the community, and he's making himself known. And to that point, just really quickly, I want to go off on one of my tangents, but the coaching staff held a clinic on Friday, and they had over 400 coaches there, and coaches came as far as New York, and it just shows that the recruiting process that they've tried to adapt and embrace. If you have 400 coaches at your clinic, and coaches are coming from as far away as New York, I mean, you're definitely covering all bases of the map here, so to speak. And I think it really speaks to Rule's recruiting vision as well. And this is a guy that won't rest, and it's because of that I think these commitments and these kids, while it would be great to have them, I'm not overly worried because this staff has shown that they can put in work on the trail.
Yeah, and they did put in some work. This last week we finally got some positive kind of momentum out of the big recruiting weekend. Is Gibson Pyle, a 3-star recruit out of Texas. Listed as an offensive tackle or also an interior lineman by 24/7 Sports. So maybe a little position versatility there, but ranked 744 overall. In the composite rankings, I know you had a breakdown on HuskerBigRed.com.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually going to be setting up an interview with Gibson later this week. So, be on the lookout for that, or this week or next week. So we'll check in with the newest Nebraska Cornhusker. But what are your thoughts on the Gibson Pyle commitment? A nice pickup for Matt Rule and company.
I really like him because he can finish his blocks. I mean, I was watching some of his highlight tape, and you hear the phrase "play to the whistle." He played to the whistle, and he finished his blocks. He was nasty and aggressive, and I thought that really showed well in terms of run blocking. I thought he did a really good job run blocking, creating holes, creating running lanes, and I think he's good at pass protection too. So I think while it may not be the Hollywood sexy name that fans are looking for, we got ourselves a pretty good player here. I really like that physicality that he brings to the table, and I like the fact that it's another player from the state of Texas. I mean, if you're going to commit to a recruiting area, do it and make sure you land some players from there. And while we may have missed out on some of the local kids like McMorris and maybe possibly Raiola, although we don't know yet, it's very clear that we're establishing a foothold in the state of Texas, and there's a lot of talent there. So on that front, I'm happy with that as well.
Yeah, I definitely like the commitment of Pyle, and I agree. He is, he's a very physical guy. I mean, he plays with a mean streak or a nasty streak.
Mm,
You see a lot of, in his blocks. A lot of his blocks end up with guys on the ground.
yep.
He shifted around a little bit. He plays a lot of his highlights. He's at left tackle, plays a little bit right tackle. I wonder about the mobility and the footwork about him being like a pure left tackle, but I could see him maybe being a right tackle or bumping inside to guard. I mean, a lot of teams nowadays are, I mean, you see that in the NFL and you see that in recruiting too, taking guys that maybe played tackle in high school and moving him inside to guard or whatever. So I feel like he's got, a couple of different positions he can play at Nebraska, and, a guy that's, I mean, 52nd among interior offensive linemen. He's not in the top 100 or whatever in Texas, but, sometimes you just have to forget the ranking and just look at the player. And I feel like he is going to really fit, Matt Rule's philosophy of pound the rock. And I feel like he's just going to be a nice fit for, the state of Nebraska and this football program and what Husker fans, expect out of their offensive linemen.
Texas is a big state too, so not being inside the 100 inside, Texas doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. I mean, I was talking to Commit's dad or Commit's uncle, excuse me, the other day, and he said a lot of kids, like we said before too, don't get recognized in the state of Texas because there's so many talent because the state's so big. So, and I think Pyle has legitimate starter potential. I'll be curious to see how he develops with this staff because they're known for working with offensive linemen, and I really do think his physicality and his mean streak will be able to serve him well in the Big Ten, especially in the red zone. If you want to get a rushing touchdown in, he'll just be able to flatten the guy he's up against. So I'm really excited to see him play. I do think, he is going to help the team. I don't think it's going to be one of those throwaway commitments where you just get a commitment and then the kid never plays. I think he's going to be a legitimate player for this program.
Yeah, I mean, 24 offers total, 17 Power Five offers. So, I mean, he definitely had a lot of legitimate interest out there. Virginia, USC offered him, Ole Miss. So, teams from the Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC, the SEC, the Pac 12. So, a team from every Power Five conference has offered this kid. And that also kind of gives you an indication of, what type of prospect he is. And, circling back to Isaiah McMorris again, I mean, I feel like, yes, the crystal ball, obviously it's not a great sign, and he didn't make his visit, but there's still time to turn these things around too. I know it's not looking great for Nebraska right at this moment with Dylan Raiola, but look back, say 5 or 6 weeks ago when USC had the buzz, and it wasn't looking that great for Georgia, and they just offered Jake Merklinger, and everybody thought that things had shifted that way. So let's just remember too that in recruiting, I mean, things can change in an instant, and I mean, Dylan Raiola was, I mean, in December, he was an Ohio State Buckeye. You know what I mean? So these things do change, and we'll see what happens. But I'm not ready to circle it out yet. I do think that Georgia's taken the lead, but I also don't know. I mean, Dylan Raiola is the only one that really knows how far we are to the finish line. So I guess that's my point. Is there's still a lot of I think race to run and with McMorris and with Raiola, and while I'm certainly pessimistic, I'm not throwing in the towel quite yet.
And isn't it must be so fun for these kids to know what decision they're gonna make and yet watch all of us and all the writers and stuff completely, flip out all over the place on these shows. Must be so fun. If I was a recruit, I would get some kind of screwed up satisfaction out of that, just making everybody freak out. But But no, I mean, to your point, things can change quickly in recruiting. I remember Keegan Johnson. I think it was 4 years ago. Everybody thought he was a Nebraska lock because he was in the state of Nebraska, and he ended up going to, was it Oregon, I believe? So
Iowa. You went to
Iowa at the
Iowa.
time,
Yeah.
or did he
Yeah.
transfer to Iowa? So okay,
Yeah,
so
some yeah, he went some. I can't. He went to Iowa, and then he just transferred from there to somewhere. I can't remember where.
yeah, but so and everybody thought Johnson was a Nebraska lock, and things changed like that. So you can never really count anything definitively out in recruiting, and I'm hoping for the best. At least we have two commitments in the 2024 class, and I think they're both solid players in Roger Gradney and Pyle. So, I mean, we're at least trying, and that's what I like to see as well. Because some years I think we really haven't tried.
Yeah, I still think, things are trending in the right direction in terms of the overall, 2024 class. I think, just because if Nebraska misses on Dylan Raiola, that doesn't mean this class is going to be like a failure by any means. There's still a lot of talented guys and guys that are coming back for the spring game. So,
Brandon Baker,
Nathaniel Frazier, you've
did-
written about him.
yep,
So,
Willis
yeah,
McGahee.
yeah, so Nebraska's they've still got a lot of really talented prospects, coming. So I still feel good about where the class is. Just they may have to, shift their thinking at quarterback a little bit. I want to shift our conversation a little bit to the scrimmage on Saturday. They went inside Memorial Stadium. Matt Rule met with the media. We got a little bit of a highlight, and obviously got some rumblings. But Heinrich Harburg again. Made some plays. When I saw him, Jeff Sims, made some nice throws. Billy Kemp, kind of stood out to me. Gabe Urban looked good. I know we only got, the highlights and kind of the reporter buzz, but what were some things, or was there anything that kind of stood out to you from that Saturday scrimmage?
Well, Matt Rule made it clear that a lot of the quarterbacks can run, and I think that's going to be extremely important with an RPO type of offense. And I know people were upset about how some fans were upset about how the defense didn't tackle or how the defense didn't look. And quite honestly, I wouldn't really put too much stock into it during the scrimmage because they were probably told to hit the quarterback, but don't blow him up. You know what I mean? And B, they're still installing the defense, and they're still trying to figure out who's going where. So, I'm just really intrigued to see how the quarterback room will shake out. Not so much, Thompson and Sims, but Harburg is making noise this spring. Then you have somebody like Richard Torres, who Matt Rule talked about, and then you have you know, Logan Smothers and all these different guys. I mean, it seems kind of weird to say this, but a lot of the Frost leftovers could, make some noise in an RPO based offense. I mean, you look at, Logan Smothers, he's a pretty good runner. Harburg, I think, is a pretty good runner. I'm not too sure about Torres because we really haven't seen him in a Nebraska uniform, but a lot of these holdovers, have a spot, I think, on this team under Matt Rule, and it's becoming clearer, I think, why they decided to stay because I think maybe they thought the same thing as well.
Yeah, we've started to see why, there's, Rule talked about, he liked Harburg before. I mean, he's like 6'4" or 6'5", 210 pounds out of Kearney. I mean, he can run. He's a great athlete. He actually was listed on his recruiting profile as an athlete. When you go back to, I want to say it was at 2021 or 2021, I believe.
Yep.
At any rate, though, he's still got a lot of years to play. And I feel like, I'm just he's one of the guys I'm really excited to see this spring, because if he can kind of show that arm talent too. And it seemed like last year he just had a difficulty kind of grasping, the offensive system. And I just don't think that Mark Whipple was a great fit for, I mean, even the players that like Scott Frost recruited, because Scott Frost, I mean, he, ran an option type system. So his quarterbacks were dual threat type quarterbacks. So I do think it makes sense in that regard that the guys that Scott recruited would make a little more sense for what Rule wants to do. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to judge the highlight tapes because you're not seeing it, and the fact is, look, I mean, if a guy goes and if the linebacker meets a running back in the hole and makes a tackle, like that doesn't make for as good of a highlight for, like a social media video as a touchdown or whatever. So, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into that stuff. I think the defense is going to be just fine. And you have to look at, the defense is missing some key guys too in the spring, and that's something that has to be taken into account. But overall, I like, again, what I've seen from Gabe Ervin. I think we've heard good things about Bryce Bennard. He's apparently in some of the best shape of his life, which can't be a bad thing. I'm just excited to see this team get out on the field, but I think the positives that we're hearing from the quarterback position, I feel at least really good about the depth. And it was nice to see, Arik Gilbert and Billy Kemp and Isaiah Garcia Castaneda go out and make some plays, in the spring game, in the limited, or in the scrimmage, in the limited, highlights that we saw.
Absolutely, and you've heard players talk about the defense all week. MJ Sherman talked about how excited he was to play in this defense and how grateful he was to be at Nebraska. Then you had the corner who transferred in from Northern Iowa, whose last name I forget at the moment, but he
Omar
talked.
Brown, is that what you're talking
Yep,
about?
yep. There we go. Omar Brown, and when you look at his skill set, he's a ball hawking type of player. He's fast, and he really kind of struggled last year in trying to find his role on the team. But I think this defense will allow players like him to really kind of play to his strengths in terms of aggressiveness and being able to not be a positionless defense, but to be an athlete and not be so scheme strict. I think there's a lot of different things that the players can do with this defense, and guys like Omar Brown, MJ Sherman. I mean, that can help them, and I think I've heard a lot of good things about this defense, and the word that keeps coming up is attack, speed, type of you know interchangeable formations and different types of positions. So I'm excited to see how the defense shapes out too, because I think this defense allows for the best athletes to be on the field, and we have a lot of them. So I'm excited to see how that side of the ball plays out as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they put Malcolm Hartzog, where he ends up, moving around. It sounds like it might be corner and safety. And so there's going to be, a lot of coverage and a chance for him to hopefully, make some plays on the ball. I really want to see the pass rush, and that's something, I've talked about a lot, but that'll be kind of the one thing I'm focused in on the defensive side of the ball is, what does the pass rush look like? How are they, lining up the defensive linemen? Where are they putting the edge rushers? Are they doing a lot of blitzing, different things like, I don't think we're going to see a lot of blitzes during the spring game per se, but yeah, that's one thing kind of I'll be watching. And I just think, it's good to, get out there and compete. And I feel like this team is really meshing and growing together. And it feels like the culture is headed in the right direction under Matt Rule. So I think those are all positive things. And we'll see what that finished product, looks like in the spring game on April 22nd. And it'll be, we should mention Frank Solich is going to be honored that day, which is a great, I think that's a great move by Trev Alberts. He was obviously, the firing wasn't, a great thing, but whatever happened, I mean, he was a player here. He was a longtime assistant here that was part of, a bunch of teams that won national championships. He coached Nebraska to a conference title. He got him to the Rose Bowl in the national championship game. So, I mean, he definitely deserves the recognition, and I'm glad that he's finally going to get it.
And apparently, he was texting Coach Rule, Solich was, during the Michigan TCU game, saying that there's still a place for the fullback in football. So, so I'm glad to see them communicating, and on a larger scale, it seems like Matt Rule has really embraced the history of the program, and he's not afraid. Some coaches are afraid when they go in; they either don't want to embrace the past or they ignore it and try to start their own thing. And that's not Matt Rule. It seems like he really wants to embrace the Husker history and the Husker legends, and it's great that Frank is coming back. It's long overdue. The curse now may be lifted, so I mean things are trending up all around.
Yeah, I did like what he said about Steve
Yeah,
Peterson or whatever. He said if
yeah.
if I could curse people, I would do a lot more people would be cursed over the years. So that I thought that was pretty funny from
And he
Frank.
didn't mention Steve Peterson by name, but we all knew
No,
who he was talking about.
he did. Yeah, so it'll be great to see him back. And before we wrap up here, I want to shift a little bit to basketball because it's transfer portal season for the Huskers. We've got a few rumblings there. I know the big question is still, what's Keisei Tominaga going to do? Trev Alberts did talk about how they're trying to explore more NIL opportunities for international players. So I know that was kind of a reference to Tominaga, but we haven't seen any movement there. I expect we'll see something soon, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But in terms of the transfer portal, one name that we have to talk about, Hunter Salas, from Nebraska, went to Gonzaga. I don't know if he was a 5-star, but he was a really highly rated recruit.
I believe he was.
I
Yeah.
think he was a 5-star. Yeah. So he's back in the portal, and Nebraska's talking to him. That would be a huge pickup. What are your thoughts on some of this transfer portal rumblings?
We have a shot, and this has never been a problem. We've landed a lot of good players. It's just been putting it all together. So, I feel pretty good about, what this coaching staff will be able to do in the transfer portal. It seems like we've been in contact with just about everybody in the portal. And so, I'm excited to see, what we end up doing. I feel like we need maybe another I'm just thinking the roster right now. Maybe another big guy, maybe another type of point guard because I think Lawrence is more of a shooting guard if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Like a combo. He's
Yeah,
kind of more of
combo.
a combo guard, yeah. But I'd rather see him at the 2 more than the 1. So yeah.
Because I liked having the pass point like pass first guard mentality that Greasel had. So I'd like to see another one of those. But I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do. We've been connected to so many names, and I think Salas would be a good one. Sometimes it's just Gonzaga's a loaded team. Sometimes, things just don't work out for certain players just because there's so much competition at the program they're at. So, I mean, I think whatever decisions Nebraska makes in the portal, they need to do so carefully because, truthfully, this is a big year for Hoiberg and the program. If they don't get at least, you know, 17, or I'm not even going to say 17, I'm going to say, 20 win range, somewhere around there, then we may be looking at a new coaching staff because last year the bar was set, and like we said before, there's really no we can't really go back and say, oh well, he has proven he can win. Other years, just look at this year because he really hasn't. So, so Nebraska needs to win now, and as a result, they need to be very conscious of their transfer portal decisions.
They did host Kerr Krisha from Arizona, point guard, and looks like things are, trending in the right direction there. It sounds like, according to Husker Online, he got a crystal ball for Xavier, and that's, he's from Arizona. Sean Miller went from Arizona to coach at Xavier. Blah blah blah. But now it sounds like it's down to Nebraska and West Virginia is basically what it comes down to. It sounds like West Virginia's put a huge NIL offer out there. So, the 1890 is going to have to, come up with, and that's a huge part of recruiting in the transfer portal. We've talked about that. But he would be a great pickup. I think he's a guy, he is a kind of assist guy. Like you said, he's not like Sam Greasel in terms of the size, but he's a playmaker. He's a guy who can shoot shots. He, is a little bit showboaty, I guess, for the lack of a better term, and he kind of rubbed some people the wrong way in Arizona. But I think Nebraska, could embrace that. I mean, Casey already kind of, is that guy. He in that showmanship a little bit, and look, this guy is a top 100 point guard. I think he would be a great fit. One thing I have to mention this. I have to bring it up. There's been some rumors out there. I don't know if you've heard these about Chucky Hepburn and Hunter Salas coming back to Nebraska. Have you heard that?
I have, and it makes for quick clicks. How valid the rumor actually is, I'm not so sure, but it is exciting to think about. I mean,
I've heard it from people besides the message boards. So I don't know. I guess if Chucky Hepburn hits the portal, then I'll believe it. But until that happens, because he obviously is a Nebraska guy too, and man, if you could bring him in, Hunter Salas, that would be a great pickup. But I feel like even if they got the kid from Arizona and say, I mean, just because Hunter is such a good defensive player, I'm sure he wants to get more opportunities to score too. But I feel like, that was kind of his role at Gonzaga, was to be one of their defensive stoppers on the wing. And I just feel like, he would be a great kind of replacement for Bandamel in terms of, just being kind of a lockdown defender out there.
yeah, and it's a shame we didn't get to see Bandamel more, but I think there's a lot of options that Nebraska can go with in the transfer portal, and it's just going to be about finding the ones that fit the program. And I'll believe all these rumors when I actually see movement in the portal, like you said. I mean, sometimes Husker fans get excited, and then Husker Twitter it just takes off, and now all of a sudden it's real, and now we're dealing with all this and yada yada yada. So I'm gonna wait until things are official, but there are certain scenarios where I would be very excited.
And yeah, I think Nebraska they still have to get a big guy. They've got to get somebody who can score in the post. I think to replace Derek Walker. Obviously, that was a huge part of their offense last year. So that's another part of it. But if you get Tominaga back, you get a big, and then you get a couple guards. I do think that this team has a very real chance to compete for a postseason berth next year. And yeah, I think at least getting to the NIT is going to be kind of I
The
don't know about the
benchmark.
goal, but yeah,
Well,
a
yeah.
benchmark. Yeah, yep, I totally agree with that. I think it's. I mean, what the next year is going to be year 5 for Fred. I mean, come on, we got to get to the
Yeah.
postseason here.
Yeah.
Fred's
Absolutely.
Fred's too good of a coach not to have this program back, and I feel like it's in a good spot. You have to hit in the transfer portal, and that's I mean if you look at a lot of the teams that are winning and have won in this tournament and then March Madness, it was they hit in the transfer portal, and that's what you got to do.
Even Miami, who lost on Saturday, Nigel Pack was a
Yep.
huge part of their tournament run, and Kansas State. So, I think the transfer portal is a part of college sports. It's time to embrace it if you want to win. And Nebraska basketball has done that in terms of getting guys in the portal, but the wins just, for the large part, haven't come.
No, but if you get Tominaga back, you've got Tominaga, Lawrence, you've got Gary. I mean, I feel like even Sam Hoiberg. I mean, you could even throw in Blaze Kid.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pieces there, and instead of it's not like Nebraska has to build an entirely new starting lineup. They just need basically a point guard and a big and a really good wing. And I mean, then boom, you can go right from there as long as you get all those other pieces back. I feel like this is going to be a pretty well-rounded team going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely pieces there. There's a solid foundation. Fred's had to start over so many times. He doesn't have to start over here, but he just needs, a couple more quality pieces, and I think this roster will look pretty good. But then again, and I hate to put it on one player, I think a lot of it hinges on whether Casey comes back.
Yes, I 100% agree. So hopefully that's the biggest news more than the transfer portal or anything else.
Yeah,
I'm focused on him coming back. So we will look to wrap it up there, you guys. We'll have more updates this week. So make sure you check out huskerbigred.com for recruiting, transfer portal, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. Get into the comment section, hit the like button. Let us know what you think about this episode, and make sure you guys look out for that Gibson Pyle interview. So for both of us here at huskerbigred.com, as always, go Big Red.
go Big Red.